Hello all.
Hey everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I think we're waiting for team to show up.
I don't see Tim online. Alexi, you had something to add? Yeah, we see
Sorry?
Ravi here. I said I
Yes,
don't see Tim online at least. Maybe Ravi, we can start from your topic.
Well, I'm gonna just give me 1 second. I'm
yeah,
pinging team, see if he's making it.
yeah.
Sure.
I think he normally sets an agenda, so you can just follow that.
Yeah, exactly. If he can't make it, I'm happily to help just execute upon his agenda. Let's give maybe him 2 more minutes, and if he's not showing up, we'll get
Yeah,
started.
maybe you can ping him on Slack or something, Alexi, if you have direct contact.
Yeah, I did it. I did it.
Sure. Okay.
Let's wait just 1 more minute. Okay, well, I haven't heard from him, so let's get started, and if he's joining, I'll let him take the lead. So I'll just share. Or Seshu, did you say you wanted to run the meeting? I'm happy to let
That's
you
fine.
run
That's
the
fine.
meeting.
No. I was just talking about the latest topic which we had in continuation to last week.
Oh, okay,
Alexi,
yeah,
over to you. Over to
cool.
you.
Okay, cool. So I think team usually wants us to approve the previous meeting notes. So has everybody reviewed the meeting notes and any comment on them? Okay, so then mark them as approved. Then I think one is more about administrative tasks. A lot of us are going to be away December 20, December 27, and and back January 3rd. So is everyone okay if we cancel December 20 and December 27?
I second that.
Okay. It should be okay. Yeah, from my end.
Hey, Alexis, I'm here, by the way. Sorry I was late.
Oh,
Hey, hi.
awesome. Hey, team. So do you want to? I was
Yeah,
just running through the second bullet point of your agenda.
yeah. Go ahead and approve that. Then I'll talk about the user stories next, right? To lead you guys
Okay,
through
cool. So we reconvene January 3rd. Okay, for everyone? Okay, so I think that's approved. And team, now over to you. Do you want to share your screen, team, or do you want me to keep screen sharing?
No, I'll get it. Just a second. Give me a moment,
Okay.
guys. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Previous meeting running long.
Yeah, no,
All right.
that's fine. We got you back. We're a team here.
I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to share. All right, so again, I think what we're looking at is we did the December 6th meeting approval, right? Is that correct, Alexis?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
done.
that's fine. Okay.
All right. And now, so let's talk about the stories, right? So the good news, guys, is that we have all the stories ready for review. So you should be able to go in and get and make your comments to the user stories that are there. I'm hoping that we're working offline to do that. Um, and so what I'd like to do here, though, is if we have Seishu on, Seishu is on, good, and Ravi on. If I could do two things, one thing real quick is we did discuss a user story last week. It's been out there for a while. This is the Great Cluster user story. So the question I have to the group is, do we have agreement? And Alexis, you would know. Do we have agreement on this particular user story?
Sorry, on which one, Tim?
The crate OCloud cluster.
So I think we addressed most of the outstanding comment, but there is one that came up, and I'm not really getting it. So maybe if you
Do
can
you want-
open this, or
Yeah.
I can open it.
Yeah, go ahead and share it, because that way you can.
Oh,
move
okay,
things
okay.
around if you want.
Well, I see Joey has his hand raised, but in the meantime, Joey, maybe you can speak up while I'm sharing, while I'm getting the share button.
Yeah, I just had a question for you, Alexis, about I know Alok had raised about the cluster templates, and I was just wondering if that was going to be included in this user story. Apologies, I was out last week, the end of last week, so I missed
Yeah,
the call.
no, that's a fair point. Let me check where we are in the story, okay? So I think most of the things were addressed. We were looking at addition here, so I don't think Alok was able. Okay, so I need to make some addition cluster template. I need to work on it. So let me take that. I didn't know it wasn't done, so I thought it would be done, but it wasn't done. So I'm going to take care of it. I was trying to get Alok to add things here, but I think he couldn't make it in time. So it's not there. So I'll add a couple of consideration, but it's a couple of bullet points. But that one is almost trivial because we know exactly what to add. But the one comment that got me wondering is this one. So I'm not sure exactly what was.
You're not sharing. I don't believe
Okay.
you're sharing.
Oh, I thought it was.
Yeah,
Okay, let me share
stop
again.
sharing. So you got it. All right, hang on.
Okay, sorry.
Share.
Okay, I'm sharing again now.
Yes, we see you now. Thank you.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, the cluster template discussion we had last week, Joey, it's not addressed yet. So I'll do that right after this call, or maybe throughout the call. It's a couple of bullet points to add. So that one is not too concerning. One that I didn't understand is the following comment. One of the assumptions is that for cluster creation is that the OCloud exists, right? That is OCloud, it's running and has undergone Genesis, right? That's an assumption because we are actually decided not to cover that use case for now. But the comment is what will be the case for provisioning an LCM of OCloud. So I don't know if Shitra Basu, are you on the call? Okay, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is currently, out of scope. That's why it's an assumption, and that's going to be part of, some of the roadmap items that we'll address, like the genesis of the OCloud. But for now, as part of what we discussed, this is out of scope. At least that's my understanding. I want to make sure everybody's on board with how I'm planning to reply to that comment.
Okay, so to the group then, again, I think we were assuming that the OCloud was going to be there before there was no Genesis in this use cases or in this release. Does anyone have objection with that? Ravi, your hand raised?
Okay, and the comment was, I mean, I thought there was the use case, the third use case was about OCloud registration, right? And I thought
Registration, yes.
Registration is
you
not Genesis, right?
so OCloud Genesis would mean that it's something that happens before the registration and then you register. But I mean, during the registration, you're going to discover all the inventory. There's going to be some inventory state in Coupa. That's what my understanding is.
So
Probably, yeah.
So the genesis is the act of spinning up an OCloud, which involved the inventory aspect, right? And the update of the SMO inventory and things like that. Okay. I think that's the pieces that, given right now, we try to decouple a little bit the implementation between IMS and SMO for OCOM. I think we said OCloud Genesis shouldn't be part of what we want to look into now. And if I recall, this is part of some of the discussion we had in the plan. I think it was planning or objective and user stories. Let me check. I think this is something we discussed because we discussed the Genesis aspect. If we look at no, it was more of a comment. So throughout the meeting notes, we discussed that Genesis wasn't going to be in R3, but rather just the registration use case.
Yeah, this is the act of the IMS that's there, registering with the O cloud, right? That's what we're doing. The O cloud from an SMO perspective, Ravi, exists. It's Genesis. So you have the infrastructure, everything else already there. All it is the IMS doing the registration. Now, is there some action that is taken by the SMO to reconcile the inventory past that? I don't think we have a use case for that yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alexis.
No, yeah, that's accurate. The next closest use case we have is cloud registration, and we're going to hopefully go through this today, but it's really more about the registration of the cloud within the use case where we're going to go in the inventory and make the proper updates.
Well, there you got.
Yeah, this is where.
Sorry.
Yeah, Tim, just one point. I
Yeah.
agree, and this is where the OCloud knows. I mean, the SMO knows that these are the OClouds with which I'll be working on, right? So
Yeah,
registration
exactly, because
starts.
that's.
Yeah, I mean, in the series of it, in the first, I mean, if I have to talk about the order of the thing, then registration comes first, then comes the creation and deletion. Order-wise.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you, Seshu.
Yeah.
I think I do agree.
No, I know. I'm just trying to put it. I know user stories we have split that way, but I was just trying to answer what Ravi said. Right? Genesis of it will start from registration, then creation, then deletion. So that's the order. I think that will make sense, right, Ravi, to what you're saying, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
No, yeah. No, my thing is like, what part of Genesis is not covered yet? Because we are talking about IMS kind of preparing the OCloud, probably the OCloud sites, OCloud nodes, and then we kind of IMS is calling home. So I'm just thinking, what part of Genesis is not? It seems to be covering all the days -1 kind of scenario.
No, so how the IMS come to life is not defined yet.
Oh, okay. You mean the life
that's in the
cycle of the
ORAN
IMS
itself. That's
okay.
in the ORAN itself, actually, not just here. Well,
yeah, how the OCloud and the first OCloud node and the software get installed in that first OCloud node, so the Genesis use case, is not. We assume that it's there, but how it got there, well, we're not tackling that just yet. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, so there will be a use case for OCloud Genesis that will be about how we create that first OCloud and how we instantiate the IMS in that first OCloud. Or in that OCloud, sorry, I should say, right?
But not, it's not for this iteration or this release cycle. It will be in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm saying this is not defined yet and is currently to be defined in the roadmap. So Ravi, is that okay with you, that understanding?
Yes, I mean, that seems to be very much what operator might do at the physical site itself, or when you rack and stack your equipments, and probably then you bring up the IMS. I think that steps are not probably articulated in working group 6 as well. As far as I know, it's like a vaguely defined thing. Yeah. That's fine.
So it's a brownfield. Right now, what OCloud is a brownfield. It's not a greenfield scenario, right? To put it in simple terms. Even from ORAN spec, it's a brownfield scenario where you assume that the cloud is already there, OCloud is there, and then you get SMO, you start the operation from there. You register and then start it. You're right, Ravi.
Okay, so let's go back to the Craig cluster. So if I understand it correctly, we can't really get agreement on this until we resolve the cluster template, right?
Yeah, I need to add a comment here. Sorry, I didn't look into this between now and then, and so I'll finalize that one. But beside that, I think everything is addressed, right? We discussed all the various outstanding comments.
Okay.
So I'll close them all once I have addressed the cluster template, so we can quickly review, and then I think we should be good with this one.
So, Stefan Byström here. Can I just ask one thing to the context of this use case? You only refer to the OCloud terminology now. There is no mapping towards where actually the Nephew architecture will play a role. I mean, if and how it will play a role as the FOCOM, or if and how it will play a role as the OCloud IMS. Should that be defined later, or is that not part of this use case?
That's an excellent point. And part of what I described yesterday in the SIG one, or 2 days ago, so I'm going to be the party pooper here, but as part of the user story definition, there are new requirements that we need to provide. It's not captured in there, but let me get you. Sorry, team, I'm going to hijack for a minute, but I think it's relevant for that comment. So I need to formalize that. It's not flushed out completely, but we agreed in SIG 1 that we require some artifact to be defined per user stories. And this is where the component architecture comes in. So what you just discussed, Stefan, how that use case, what it means for the Nephew architecture. What are the various system level architecture based on the existing Nephew system architecture, and so on. So these things are required per user story, but that's something that just got approved 2 days ago. So it's not part of the user stories today, but we'll have to complement them with these artifacts before, I think, end of Jan.
Okay, fine. Thanks. That sounds good.
Okay. Team, back to you. Tim? Okay, well, so at least that's the create Kubernetes cluster, right? That's where we are. So I think there is a minor addition that I need to do, and then at least the current state of it is good. Team, are you on the call?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so I captured. Yeah, I'll take it back, because I think what I want to do, guys, is have some time for Robbie and Seishu, since Seishu's on, talk about the NF orchestration. So Robbie, are you ready to do that? Can you share?
Oh yeah, 1 second. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Do you see my screen? Let's make it a little bit big here. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, Ravi.
Okay. Sure. So again, this has been put together by me and Seishu. So it's primarily, I think it's coming from the perspective that there is an ongoing work in ORAN SC related to this use case, and so I would say the the key ownership lies on Seishu, but I was trying to kind of help out with this use case, trying to kind of meet our deadlines and so on. It's basically, the template is following what Alexei had. So I just took that and tried to mirror the details what we have in the use case document into this document. So do you want me to go through? I don't see any as such comments here.
Yeah.
Other than
So
what had,
this one is
or,
kind of new. This one's kind of new, right? Because it's brand new. It came out.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Since Seishu's here, right, that gave you a lot of input, I wanted to make sure that we go through it and people can ask the questions, and that way, if Seishu's here, it can help answer the question. That's why I kind of pushed it up there.
Okay,
Even though
yeah.
other-
Let me give a high level view, and then Cheshu can take over.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
basic idea here is that so we have come up with an FEO and an ORAN integrated architecture where we said within FEO we are going to realize certain components of the SMO. So we are saying there'll be certain intelligence of NFO and SMO realized within the FEO. In the NFEO framework, but then these components itself would be interacting with the other SMO components using the SMO, the SMOS APIs, while there'll be certain mapping from the SMOS APIs into the intent and so on. So in that sense, this is a use case that says, SMO is there's everything, all probably the two use cases that Alexi had. We have the cloud that has been homed. You have the FOCOM having the inventory and so on. Then there's a cluster that's created the cloud sites, and now the operator is ready to provision network functions, and that's where this use case comes in. So within ORAN architecture, when you talk about network function, these are the kind of the functions that would be getting provisioned. So we have the DU, CUCP, CUP, and XApps. In addition, we also handle the provisioning of the near real-time RIC platform itself in the OCloud sites, through which you would want to control the different ORAN functions. So this is basically this is primarily describing things at a high level as at the same level of detail that Alexi had in his document, and the profile that we are in. So O2 DMS itself is being standardized in two profiles. You have the HC profile and the KHS profile. So here, primarily, since end-to-end everything is Kubernetes, it just follows the Kubernetes profile of O2 DMS here. We have stakeholders, personas. These are all basically taken from some similar kind of roles that have been defined within the use case spec itself. There's some definition of deployment descriptor, deployment item, cloud native descriptor file. So these are all kind of constructs, I think, that is coming from the working group 10, where these broader definitions are being defined, and within I think working group 6, it's to cover the two modes of deployment, two modalities. I would say we have the VNF-based deployments and the containerized deployments. So that's where these general terminologies come in, and these terminologies are used in the use cases. That's where it is. So a deployment descriptor primarily just describes everything about a network function. So generally, in case of a containerized deployment, it's the ASD, what we call as application service descriptor. Deployment, a network function itself will have multiple network function deployment kind of subcomponents, and each subcomponent will be defined using your cloud native descriptor file, which primarily is your Helm charts and your KTS manifest kind of files. And then you also have certain references to the executable image, containerized image, and so on. Here, then we talk about the design and the architectural consideration. So the key things I was trying to highlight here is about what I even I had earlier mentioned. So SMOs, there's certain realization of FOCOM and NFO within the NFO framework, and there's an interaction that happens with the other components using the SMOS APIs, and then so there's I tried to flesh out some functions that NFO would have to implement in the context of this use case, saying that there is certain mapping that goes from the SMOS APIs into the intent processing kind of to basically mapping it to appropriate intent APIs. And once you do that, then there is certain decisions that needs to be taken in terms of looking at those cloud native descriptors and validating against the cluster state. So there's a homing decision that needs to be done. And then you're basically invoking the appropriate KTS APIs over O2 DMS. And also the other thing I said, so in this, you would have to have, inevitably, there should be some interaction between the NFO and the FOCOM. there are all these two kind of controllers that are running within the network framework. So that is another architectural consideration or design requirement, you can say. Assumption is that, okay, you know what kind of network function you're deploying. Okay, if there is some relationship between the network functions, you kind of say what that is. So these are all details that has come from the base use case that we have.
Maybe just one.
Yeah,
Ravi.
go ahead, please.
In the previous one, basically what the point which is highlighted is it's a binding force between the other use cases, right? Right from coming from the registration, creation of the cluster, and then going on to the use case which Sagar is working on, where the NF will be instantiated. So this is a use case which will be binding those two, the one which is defined by Alexei and the one which is defined by Sagar. So that is the point which is being taken here to highlight those 3 points. Yeah, Ravi.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's
Hey,
no certain
Ravi,
dependency.
if you could do me, hang on just a second. Ravi, also, if you could do me a favor and just quickly go through this, because Joey's been waiting with his hand up, and then I'm going to ask for clarification.
Oh, yeah.
Sure,
One
sure,
second.
please.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be done. Yeah, in 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
So requisites, as I said, all those requisites that what Seshu was talking about, we have the OCloud kind of homing done and all the inventory and everything, your packages onboarded and so on. The procedure is pretty simple, saying that, okay, the procedure, I think it goes for saying that, okay, we have a set of network functions that needs to be deployed. Network functions come with certain information on homing requirements. You could say, okay, it's precise kind of thing, or some relative kind of information in that sense. And the NFO should have the intelligence of finding out, basically taking that information and deciding where you kind of would want to home at. And for each one of those network functions, you pretty much derive your network function deployment components, and then your cloud native descriptors, and then you just go about deploying them. There's other thing that, okay, if you see that the FOCOM itself doesn't have all the cluster doesn't have the necessary kind of requisites for handling this network function, then FOCOM can go and kind of update or kind of add those or enable those functions to handle this particular network function. Other than that, it's about once you kind of deploy it, and then there is another thing where you are also trying to configure the ORAN so that the services can be enabled. So there is other kind of homing that happens from the network functions manage element that goes into your SMOAM to kind of do the day one kind of configurations and so on. So yeah, these things are general requirements, again, taken from the use case spec itself. Then I just kind of added one thing caveat here that, okay, there is some ongoing work to change this use case from network function to network function deployment item, so we could synchronize that use case later. Other than that, I think these are all kind of comments where we said, okay, it's O2D KTS profile that's being used and so on. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is, hopefully this is a high level. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Right. Okay. So let's do this, guys. Let's get some, because so we got an overview. So let's get some questions for clarification, right? So people can know, because my expectation is that if you have changes or comments, detailed comments, that you're going to go into that use case document and make comments there, because we're going to have to resolve these comments, guys, offline over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks, right? So just letting people know, so there's expectations. So Joey, you had your hand raised first, and Prakash, you're next. So Joey?
Yeah, it's a general comment, I guess, and it is basically about this, what you kind of highlighted here. This is kind of concerning, basing it off of the current use case, and you talk a lot about network functions in here, and there's a difference between what the O2 sees and what a network function is. The O2 interface doesn't understand what a network function is, and when you say it's looking to update to more granular NF deployment item, there's a difference as well between an NF deployment and then the deployment item. The O2 interface only deals with NF deployments, which are part of an NF. And you mentioned earlier you talk about the ASD. The ASD defines defines an NF deployment, not an NF. So it's concerning that this is all at the NF level, because the NFO doesn't deal at that level. The NF would be, or if you think of it in an ORAN term, the cloudified NF, that is dealt with above the NFO by the SO. So, or that is the kind of the current sentiment. And I think the you're saying here that it's a, oh, we can update it when the use case gets updated in work group 6. There's a big difference between what you have here and what I would expect to see of an NF deployment level use case for whatever it is, instantiation or termination, any sort of orchestration. So I would be very concerned with this user story the way it is now, because it doesn't actually align with the O2 DMS Kubernetes interface at all. The O2 DMS Kubernetes interface only deals in NF deployments. So that I can go through and review it offline and give more specifics throughout. But in my general comment is, this is not a small thing that to go from one to the other. They're completely different levels of orchestration. And that's why I'm a bit concerned about this as a whole.
Yeah. So if I'm
Yeah.
gonna get
So
I
just comment. So yeah, this is basically going off. I was trying to, because I was looking in the November train specs, and there was this one particular CR there that said, but I don't think it kind of made it through to the November train document. Probably, I don't know. Probably it's the same kind of concerns that you're expressing, but it was more about saying that if that happens to get into any spec, then you could mirror it. But generally, it is the granularity is sticking to what is in the specs right now, which is basically a network function deployment. But hang on. Deconstruction. Yeah,
Ravi, I'm going to stop this right now. Right, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to stop this one. Right. So what we're doing here is we have an O2 DMS that's a K8S, right? As Joey said, rightfully, is that it only works with an NF deployment. Okay.
Yes.
So that is the API that we must work with in this release 3. Okay. Now, the NFO and the service orchestration, I expect somewhere within Seishu's group that you've got to take an NF, and you're going to have to be able to orchestrate it into deployments that can use the K8S API. That is what I believe that we're looking for out of this use case. Is that accurate, Joey, from your standpoint?
Yes, and that's where ESD comes into picture also, to add to what Joey was saying, right?
Okay, so Seishu and Joey are aligned on this, right? Joey,
So,
I want to get Joey's. Hang on, Seishu. I want to get Joey's. Joey, is that accurate?
Can you just repeat the last thing you said, Tim? Sorry, I missed it.
I said the O2 DMS for K8S is based upon an NF deployment, not on an NF. Okay, and so what we have to do is in the NFO and the SO, we have to figure out how to get an NF into its requisite deployments and use the O2 DMS deployment API as a deployment. And Seishu says that's correct, and I'm making sure that you've got that same.
Yeah, and I just want to just stress as well, when you talk in the terms NF and its deployment, an NF deployment is the thing. It's not a deployment of an NF. Just to be clear.
That's right.
You're saying the deployments. It's not. They're not. It's its own kind of logical entity. So just to be clear on that. But yes, you're correct. In that sense that it. This was also written before there was a Kubernetes DMS. That's why it's very misaligned.
Yeah, and so I'm okay with that. So what we have to do is, Ravi, with respect to this, and Seishu and Joey, we have to align to that agreement on this use case. So if we can comment on within that construct, I think we'll be okay. Okay. So if you can apply the appropriate comments and help modify to that approach. Prakash, you had your hand up and waited patiently. Go ahead.
Yeah. So can you hear me first?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ravi and Seishu, my question is: are we looking at fitting the SMO into the NFO, or is it trying to get the network function, which could be a because we talk about cluster means Kubernetes cluster. I'm thinking that is the load cluster, which is load, is network function load, or the service load on the network function. So, is there not a hierarchical relation between the SMO being at the top level, then you have got the service management or service orchestration, and then the network function, which could be what you call containers, as well as could be part of what you call the network functions in VMs. And are we combining the two? Are we separating the two? And to the extent going into the what you call the onboarding, which is you generally onboard a network function, but then service is different, right? That's another aspect. And then when you talk about the CU, DU, and OCU, ODU, and all that, they themselves are made of components. So are we trying to build the platform, or are we trying to use the platform? It's a bit unclear to me from
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, so if I may respond, so, of course, when you talk about SMO, you're talking about end-to-end service cycle, entire service orchestration. So,
Correct.
but here we are realizing the whole of the SO or the SMO within Nephew. What we have chosen is only a certain set of subcomponents, which is here we are talking about. We had said, okay, we'll initially just try to realize the O2 interface. So within the O2 interface and the SMO itself, there are the two components are the FOCOM and the NFO. So we are only focused on these two items being realized on Nephew. And then the only interface that matters, the two interfaces that matters is your O2 IMS interface, O2 DMS. So all the use cases that we are kind of handling here is from the perspective of kind of these two interfaces only. So saying that, okay, there is somebody who's defining the service, and then at some point the service components has, or network functions has certain cloud requirements. So those things should be handled from the FOCOM perspective, and then when you're orchestrating that end-to-end service, each network function will be called out and will be kind of orchestrated, and that will come to the NFO. At that point, this we will be kind of defining this NFO kind of intents through which you would be orchestrating the network function. So we are not kind of boiling the whole ocean here. It's just a small part of the SMO that is being kind of realized here and within Nephew. Is this Prakash or?
Yeah,
I can't.
yeah, got your,
yeah, okay, yeah.
Got
Yeah.
your inputs correctly. Okay, so I understand
Yeah.
that it's a limited Nephew function which we are trying to deal with at interface
It's the first
level.
step, Prakash. What I would say, it's the first step of the realization, and we have a long-term goal. I mean, once we have the service orchestration part of it also realized in the workgroup 1, this will also lead way to that, but that is in future. Right now, what we are, as I said, right now what we are trying to do is we are trying to make the matchmaking between the story which we saw from Alexei and the story which is coming from the Sagar. So that is exactly what Ravi was talking about, right? That is in the scope of the NFO and the FOCOM being realized as a starting step.
Cool. I think it makes sense. So
Yeah.
I'll
And if you
we'll
see, if you see what not in the scope, if you can scroll down, Ravi, scroll down, Ravi. Yeah. Here we have actually said about the other things also, FMPM and O1. Here we can also add service orchestration as a explicit item also to make that confusion go away, Prakash, if it makes sense.
Sure. I think that makes sense, because otherwise one would assume that this is end-to-end. It's not end-to-end. It's simply.
Yes. So we can put that service orchestration part here, what is not in scope. Also, we can move that the highlighted one, which you just talked about, right, Ravi? The paragraph which you highlighted about. That can be moved into down, so that it also answers the other question or part of the question which Joey was asking sometime before. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
I'll
wait for Joey to comment, and then we can do the appropriate changes.
So just to be clear, though, that in your steps, just make sure that the SO is not a part of your steps either, right?
No,
you don't. Okay, so I just want to make sure that okay, so it starts just with NFO. All right.
Yeah, cool. It is NFO. I mean, we don't have any SO there, but what Prakash was saying is the implicit meaning to remove that, we will put service orchestration as part of the out of the scope. So that clarifies it, right, Prakash? I think that makes sense, isn't it?
I think that makes sense because we are only doing some limited stuff.
Yes.
All right.
And that should be very clear to everybody. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we can get into complexity much more. Just simple thing here.
Okay,
The
guys.
problem is
All right.
the term service means a lot of things. As in step 3, we are saying service means a lot of things. So just to make sure, we'll put that, and that will clarify everything. Okay, let's take that.
Yeah, it's little bit, you have to word it correctly because this is a part of the service orchestration. So
Exactly. So
we need, and SMO doesn't deal with everything, right? There are
yes.
certain functions that ORAN deals with. So yeah.
All right. So let's give this chance now. So on this one, guys, let's go ahead and start commenting on it, right? If that's okay. And Robbie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on, and I'm going to let Segar have one of his that he's got, because there's 2 of his, and then we'll hopefully, well, it's 15 minutes. So Segar, you got about 10 minutes. Then I'm going
Yes,
to ask the group a bit.
Sorry,
So-
Tim, maybe
yes, sir.
guys who have raised their hands, if you can close, put down your hands also, it will be easy for us to see who is raising. If your question is answered. Ravi, I see your hand. Joey, I see your hand. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, this is a new race hand. Just quickly, I'll just what's the timeline with this then? Because I just
Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
so just in general with these use cases, what we wanted to do was try to get our internal agreement by the beginning of next year. So that, because as Alexis noted, that there's some additional artifacts that we got to use during January to give over to the SIG 2, right? So we've got to kind of come into agreement with the concepts, the steps. We'll create the artifacts in January. We want to have all this stuff handed over to SIG 2 by the end of January, okay? For these 6 pieces of it. So what I'm trying to do is trying to get the agreement from the team, when we come back in January, that people have worked on their use cases by commenting it in Slack offline, and hopefully we can come down and have agreement if there's no serious problems, that people then can further define it with all those artifacts that Alexa showed in January. Does that make sense, Joe? That we're trying to do?
Okay, yeah. So there's time. Yeah, because
Yeah,
from
you got
next
a
week
couple.
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple weeks, but again, I know we're trying to do this during the holidays, but I'm kind of stuck here. We've got a hard handover to SIG 2 the 1st of February, so they can produce this stuff in June, right? June, July. So,
Mm-hmm.
or we're gonna have to produce some stuff too. So, okay. All right.
I'm
So
assuming this includes the new sections that
not
we discussed.
January. So in January we'll go build the new section, right? That's what we're going to do in January, because we're going to have to have conversations with SIG 2 guys in January to make sure that when the handover happens at the end of January, everything is okay. And honestly, I don't know if we're ready for all those. I don't know if all those artifacts have been identified what is actually needed, right? So there's some. I'd asked yesterday that they provide the team that's working on what these artifacts are to provide some examples. Where we don't have examples, we'll start building stuff. But I don't think we're going to be able to do much of it. You can take a look at them. Maybe Alexis is a little bit further along on the cluster stuff, but he's also working on the artifacts. But I'm trying to get you guys to agree on the use cases, and then we'll add the artifacts, right? So if you agreed on the use case before that, we can start looking at the artifacts, but I wasn't trying to push that rope yet. Okay. So Segar, go ahead. Let's do 10 minutes and then give me 5 minutes at the end. Okay.
Okay.
Hit the trouble spots that you're trying to get here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, instead of 10 minutes, I'm going to give it even less so that Joseph can present the other user story. That'll be quick then. So I'll be very quick in the user story. So I just changed the naming. I kept it to reconfigure ORAN network function rather than just focusing on the deployment capacity, because the term capacity, which we took from R1, which was the way it was implemented and integrated inside the CRDs, I don't think it's fair to apply directly inside in RAN use cases, because we cannot just say that I want 10 Mbps to 20 Mbps throughput, or just increase the throughput, make changes inside the configuration parameters, because the configuration parameters of a RAN, the different configuration parameters can affect the capacity, right? So to be fair on that regard, so what I did is that in this user story, I'm trying to explain two sides to make changes in the RAN deployed ORAN network function, either with or without O1. So if none of you is interested in O1, I can strike out the O1 part, but I've just given the information to be there. But in R3, it's mostly about without O1, because since we don't have it, let's say. So for that, in this user story, what I'm focusing in is that I've taken one single ORAN network function, let's say ODU, and in ODU, the way we are deploying ODU today in R2 is that we have a CR known as nfconfig CR, and that CR doesn't have a defined structure so far by Nephew. So the network function provider, let's say in this case, is open air interface, and the operator is defined by Joseph. So Joseph, what he has done that me and Joseph, we have defined a structured nfconfig, which will be taken by the RAN controller. So it will be an input to the RAN controller, and that nfconfig, there are certain parameters. And two of those parameters out of that is downlink carrier bandwidth and uplink carrier bandwidth. So what we can do is that we can change these parameters. Let's say that we change these parameters, and then once we change these parameters, the RAN controller will sense that nfconfig has been updated, and then it will redeploy the DU. So in this whole scenario, the DU will be redeployed. The changes will not be done on the fly. So meaning that if there is a UE which is connected to the DU or the RU, it will be affected, and the UE has to be reconnected. Whereas if it's only for us, let's say if we do it via O1, but though we don't have it, it can be done on the fly. But for the moment, we don't have any capability in, let's say, OAI that without stopping the network function, we redo it as the way we have implemented the controller. So there will be a restart. That's what I want to focus on. I've mentioned the steps. There are very few steps. If somebody wants more details, I can add more details in the steps. And for the acceptance criteria, I've kept it really simple, that either we check it in the logs which are printed in the DU that the new bandwidth is taken into account, or if we have the possibility and we have the complete system, let's say, we can do some sort of end-to-end test using iPerf for throughput. Let's say we have Tim, I'll just take it just a moment. So that if we have, let's say, we have certain bandwidth, we do an iPerf test and we see that we have X throughput, then we do another, then we increase the bandwidth, then we do the test, and then we see what's the throughput. So this way we can have, let's say, two different type of acceptance criteria. So now so yeah, Tim, what's your question?
Yeah, just real quick on this one.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we've already said O1 is out of scope. So we're not going to use the SMO, and I'm looking at Seishu that he's on. We won't use the SMO O1 client to do the reconfiguration of the ODU bandwidth. Is that accurate for this one, guy?
Yeah.
So the only approach on this one that we need to make sure that we know what's supported and what's not supported. We won't support in release 3 with O1, right?
Yes, we won't. So
Okay.
I can strike it out.
If you could clearly note that, they said in scope, out of scope. There was some stuff on what Robbie had. I don't care. Just as long as we know what's in scope. That's all.
Yeah, I have mentioned in the note. So there is a note there. In the note, I have written that the user story is based on open interface, and in FUR3 will not focus on using O1 interface. So
yeah, but with O1, just note that that's out of scope too on that design consideration. That way people don't get lost.
Okay. I mean, I can also strike out the O1 part. Okay.
No. Just you can do that, but I would just put comma not in scope release 3, right? With O1.
Yeah, you can put a section
under your design, right? So.
Okay. Any other questions, Ravi?
Yeah, so at a much high level, so basically when we talk about ORAN use cases, we are talking about something either, I mean, some interface play that is coming from the SMO, in this case, the OEM or something, and then you're doing either to O1 or O2 or some one of this interface that's defined by ORAN. But I mean, say then what makes it a ORAN use case? It's most coming from that perspective. Do we still call it as ORAN network function? Because this seems to be very specific to OAI, right? I mean, I mean, because here we are putting everything in the context of ORAN. Why, I mean, why not? When we said, okay, we are not going to touch the OMPs this cycle, right? But does it make sense that we put that in the roadmap, saying that okay, eventually it will become an ORAN use case, so that I mean, though it could be kind of something that's pre-standard, but still there would be some notion where once you orchestrate the network function, you would have some OEM controller within the Nephew context. You could kind of register to it and then do your reconfiguration.
So if I may answer that. So see, this is not really specific to OAI or anything. It's just that at the particular moment, see, we decided that in R3 we don't have O1 and we will not focus on O1, but let's say we can start on that road of reconfiguration. And then in R4, we can do the same thing with O1, or let's say in R5 or whatever. But right now we will just be on that particular road. Though the use case, so the thing is the network functions are ORAN network functions, but the way we are reconfiguring the ORAN network function is not the ORAN way. So I just reiterated. So if we include this user story in R3, it will be just going into another step forward. Let's say that in R4 we will do it with O1, you know. So we're just doing the same user story in different steps. That's how I look at it.
So do we want to capture that phase 1, phase 2 kind of thing in this document, or so that people, when they read it, okay, they could still relate that eventually it is leading to an ORAN use case?
Well, I think that's what we did. When we does the with O1, he says not for this release, right? That's at that point we know we're picking it up.
You have
So
it there. Okay.
There's a bigger plan that we're talking about, I think, in crawl or walk, I can't remember, but where we're saying we're going to have to add O1 to these things. So there's that whole theme. I'm not going to get into that theme here, but we're just trying to crawl, right?
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. Okay. Probably seems to have been answered. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll let Joseph now present, right? That'll be good.
Hello. Yeah, sure. You can hear me?
Yeah. I'll just stop presenting. Sorry. Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, Robin. Go ahead, Joseph.
In the chat, actually.
Meanwhile, Sagar, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, I'll answer that. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, Joseph, we can.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, this use case I think was put up, and I suggested that there is some work going on in the ORAN ST related to this. So that's why I've checked with them, the person who's working on it. So the person name is Naman. So he's working on this, on developing KATS operators for deploying and managing Yanati and XAP. So, but they have not looked at Nephew. So, so I was thinking there could be a collaboration possibility here, and we could use that and use Nephew on top of that, and use Nephew to deploy the Yanati and XAP, which is addressing this use case. So this is considering without SMO, which means we would use the same deployment mechanisms that we used in R1 and R2. So the near RT would look like an NF or a workload, an additional workload on top of the existing NFs that we are planning to support. So I've tried to list down some of the features and why we want to do it. And I have put here stakeholders for NSC, and also I put the links below to refer to their implementations, which they currently have, which they have contributed to the towards the release of ORAN SC. So the links are here, so you can go through it for more details. And yeah, and for design, I'm proposing that we reuse. We don't develop the operators again here, so we just reuse what is there in the Anataric project, and just are aligned with Nefio so that we can deploy it using Nefio. That's approach. And in terms of CRDs, I think we'll have to decide this. I put some possible options. So whether there is an common NF deployment CRD that we're using in R2, which is used for OAI and 3.5GC. But will that be reused for near Anataric? I'm not fully sure. We need to analyze that because the parameters within CRD are not fully relevant with near Anataric. So we need to see if we can expand NF deployment or we use a new CRD for near Anataric kind of NFs. So, or workloads. This is something that we'll have to discuss and finalize. And requirement wise, just simple requirements that I have put for now.
Hey, Joseph, so it's,
yeah,
we got about 1 minute. So my question is, so you guys can
yeah.
see what we're trying to do here. Is there any high level quick questions that could be asked? If not, I'm going to ask for you guys also to comment on it. So is there any major concerns? Ravi, you get last word.
Yeah, no, yeah. So the question was related to, again, the NF orchestration, NFO, which Seishu is kind of, it's also part of that use case. So I'm assuming that they all interconnect, right? In the ORAN SC, so you have XAP, but near Anataric. Why are they not getting orchestrated to the same NFO implementation?
We're crawling, guys. Come on, we're crawling. So
I'm just trying to understand what the status in ORAN SC is. That's all. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just put the comments there. So that's fine. Thank you.
So what is so Seishu, could you? We wanted to get it deployed first, and then we're going to hook it up to the SMO, because we're going to take a simple version through the SMO first, but then we'll take the more complex one second. Was my reasoning behind it.
Yeah. By the way, one more thing I just want to add, in the ORAN SC, right? This the SMO project, unlike what you see on the architecture versus what we have in OSC, is different. OSC, we have multiple projects which come under this thing, and this come under the RIG project. Okay. This is still SMO, I would say. We are still working with it. And as I said before, we have the connectivity which is to be established between them. So right now, what Joseph is actually showing is one of those actions which are happening independently in the OSC project. And as rightly said by Tim, we will start to deliver the baby first, I would say, even before crawling. Right? First, we'll make sure that the baby is delivered, then we'll make it crawl, run, and then heap. Yeah. Ravi, I hope that answers your question.
My expectation, Ravi, is that in release 4, that we will, through the SMO, whether it's the NFO or further up, we would have all the ORAN NFs at least deployed. So we'll hook them up, right?
Yeah.
But let's blaze the trail first with a simple one.
Yeah, no, at some point, probably, Seishu or somebody can give us that overview of the OSC so that we know how this implementation.
Yeah. Still waiting on that from Seishu.
Sure, okay.
All right. Okay. So, guys, it is 11:01. So again, my expectation is that we've got these 5 or 6. All the use cases are out there ready for review. We won't meet again till January 3rd. I need you to go and work offline using Slack and the comment Google Docs to get as close to agreement as possible, so we can come in January fresh and work on these other artifacts that that Alexis has got built, right? So I know it's during the holidays. I know people's got the holidays. I'm just letting you know that we've got a pressure of the end of January. So, any other questions before we close?
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, guys. That's
Yes.
it.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, guys. See you again January 3rd, and see you on Slack. Slack,
Yep.
later.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See that